Jonas Reed had always been a quiet man. Working as a janitor on the research station orbiting Draven, he spent most of his days sweeping floors, emptying trash, and cleaning the laboratories after the scientists had left. The station was huge, a sprawling metal maze filled with glowing panels, blinking lights and humming machines. It was not a glamorous job, but Jonas liked the quiet routine. He liked the way the corridors smelled of polished metal and ozone after a long day's work. One evening, as the station lights flickered with the coming of a minor storm from Draven below, Jonas pushed his cleaning cart through the storage hall. This hall was rarely visited by anyone except supply crews, and dust had gathered in thick layers over boxes and crates. As he moved past a stack of cargo containers, a small, pained squeak caught his attention. He paused, frowning. The sound was soft, almost like a whisper, but it carried through the metal hallway clearly. Jonas bent down carefully, peering into the shadows between crates. There, huddled in a corner, was a tiny creature unlike anything he had ever seen. Its scales glimmered with shades of red and gold, faintly catching the light of the overhead panels. Its wings were folded awkwardly, too small to support flight, and it shivered as if exhausted. The creature's eyes, large and round, looked up at Jonas with a mix of fear and hope. Security had always warned the staff about leaving stray life forms in the storage halls. "If it's an alien hatchling, leave it alone," they had said. "We can't predict its behavior." But Jonas felt something stir inside him, a mixture of curiosity, sympathy, and responsibility. He could not leave it there to die. He carefully crouched down and extended a hand. "Hey, little one," he whispered softly. The hatchling flinched at first, letting out a tiny hiss, but Jonas did not move quickly. He spoke in calm, low tones, letting it know he was not a threat. Slowly, the hatchling edged forward, pressing its small head into his palm. Jonas examined it gently. Its scales were warm but slightly dry and cracked in some areas, and its tiny body had scratches from what he guessed were falls or sharp edges in the storage hall. Using a soft cloth from his cart, he wiped the dust and grime from the creature's body. The hatchling remained still, trusting him despite its fear. He found some nutrient gel in a supply box and offered it carefully. At first it sniffed, unsure, then licked it tentatively. Jonas smiled, relieved. "There, that's better," he said softly. He stayed with it, humming quietly to keep the hall from feeling empty. The sound of his voice seemed to comfort the creature. Hours passed, and Jonas remained by its side. The storage hall was silent except for the gentle hum of the station's systems and the occasional squeak from the hatchling. When other staff or scientists walked past, they glanced at Jonas curiously but did not interfere. No one seemed to notice the small, glowing creature tucked under his arm. He made a small nest using spare blankets from a supply crate, lining it carefully so the hatchling could rest. He whispered stories to it as he worked, telling it about the stars, about the distant planets, and about the humans who lived on them. He did not know if it understood, but the creature pressed its tiny head into his hand, closing its eyes in comfort. Night fell over the station and the artificial lights dimmed slightly. Jonas leaned against a crate, exhausted but unwilling to leave the hatchling alone. He checked its breathing, ensured it was warm, and continued to speak softly. It was in those quiet hours that he felt the deep connection forming, a bond not of ownership but of trust and care. The hatchling's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, reflecting the red and gold of its scales, and Jonas marveled at the beauty of such a small life surviving in a place so large and indifferent. By the time the first shift change occurred, other staff noticed something unusual. A janitor, usually ignored, had remained in the storage hall with an alien hatchling all night. Whispers spread through the corridors, some full of curiosity, others tinged with fear. "What is he doing with that thing?" one scientist asked. "Do you think it's dangerous?" Jonas paid no attention to the rumors. He was focused entirely on the creature. He cleaned its wounds again in the morning, checking each tiny scratch. The hatchling chirped softly, stretching its small wings and curling into his hands when it felt tired. Jonas had never felt such responsibility before, yet he embraced it naturally, guided by instinct more than thought. By midday the hatchling began to move more confidently. It tried flapping its wings, wobbling slightly but not falling. Jonas encouraged it, placing it on a small padded surface so it could test its strength safely. It chirped happily, nuzzling his hand whenever it succeeded. Despite the warnings and the strange looks from the scientists, Jonas refused to give up on the hatchling. He understood, without fully knowing why, that saving this creature might mean more than he could imagine. There was a trust between them, a recognition that one life could care for another in a way that mattered. The hatchling had survived the night, and with Jonas's care, it would survive the next days as well. And although Jonas did not yet know it, his small act of kindness, his decision to stay, to nurture, to protect, had set in motion events that would change the station, the planet, and the galaxy in ways he could not yet imagine. Jonas Reed, the human janitor, had discovered that courage and compassion often mattered more than rank or title. And in that quiet storage hall, with a tiny red and gold hatchling resting safely in his hands, he realized that sometimes the most important heroes were the ones no one noticed, until the moment they mattered most. The end. From the moment the hatchling had opened its eyes fully, it seemed to know Jonas. It chirped softly whenever he entered the hallway and nudged his hands with its tiny snout, curling against him whenever he crouched down. The bond between them grew quickly. Jonas could hardly take a step without feeling the soft weight of the hatchling clinging to his arm or hopping along behind him. He had never seen anything like it. No other creature on the station had shown such clear attachment to a human. At first, the scientists were skeptical. Dr. Laura Kent, a xenobiologist, leaned against a railing overlooking the cleaning corridors one morning, watching Jonas push his cart with the hatchling perched safely on the edge. "I don't understand it," she murmured to her assistant. "It ignores all of us. It won't eat when we offer food. It refuses to be handled. But with him, it's different. It listens, it responds, it seems happy." Jonas overheard this but did not respond. He simply smiled at the hatchling, stroking its small head gently. "I don't know why you like me," he said softly. "Maybe we're just friends?" The hatchling chirped in response, almost as if agreeing, and pressed its tiny body closer to him. The hatchling's behavior began to have strange effects on the station itself. Small systems, long known to glitch or malfunction, seemed to behave better in Jonas's presence. Lights flickered less, temperature regulators stabilized, and the cleaning robots worked with precise efficiency whenever he was nearby. The staff were mystified. Dr. Kent even ran several diagnostic tests, but the data showed no explanation. The only variable that had changed was Jonas and his companion. Jonas did not try to manipulate the systems or show off. He simply went about his work, cleaning floors, emptying trash, and checking storage rooms, all while the hatchling followed him. When he stopped to wipe a panel or sweep a corner, the little creature would perch nearby, chirping softly, tilting its head as if supervising. Staff passing by often paused, curious and slightly amused by the sight of a human janitor and an alien hatchling moving as a team. One afternoon, a minor alarm went off in the lab sector. A containment field around a small sample began to flicker. Technicians rushed in, expecting panic, but as soon as Jonas entered the room carrying the hatchling, the alarms quieted. Panels stabilized, lights stopped blinking erratically, and the containment system resumed normal function. The technicians exchanged bewildered glances. "It's reacting to him," whispered one. "It's as if the station itself knows he's here." Jonas shook his head slightly, confused. "I don't know what's happening," he said. "I'm just doing my job." The hatchling chirped, brushing against his hand as if agreeing that no explanation was necessary. Over time, the bond became more visible and undeniable. When Jonas walked through the dining halls, crew members noticed that the hatchling would settle on a railing or hop lightly along the floor, looking at him intently. If anyone else tried to approach, the creature would chirp sharply or retreat into Jonas's arms. Jonas would shrug apologetically and continue on, speaking softly to it, calming it with gentle words. The hatchling's attachment influenced the humans around it as well. Staff who had been tense or irritable suddenly seemed calmer near Jonas and the creature. Arguments in the lab were resolved more quickly, and meetings ran smoother. Some joked that the hatchling had magical powers, but no one could explain why it had chosen Jonas, nor why its presence affected more than just their behavior. Jonas, for his part, never exploited the hatchling. He did not show it off or use it for advantage. He simply cared for it as he would a child, giving it food, warmth, and gentle attention. The hatchling responded with loyalty, affection, and an unmistakable sense of trust. They became inseparable. The little creature would chirp softly when he paused, nuzzle him when he knelt to clean a spill, and even curl up on his shoulder when he rested. Dr. Kent and her team continued to observe. "I've never seen a xenobiological bond like this," she said one day in a staff briefing. "It's more than instinct or survival behavior. There's something unique here, an emotional connection but also a functional effect. Systems respond differently. The hatchling chooses him and the environment seems to follow." Jonas did not fully understand this. He only knew that he liked the hatchling, and that caring for it made the long hours feel lighter. He spoke to it quietly in the cleaning corridors, telling it about his day, the humans on the station, and occasionally joking about how clumsy he felt pushing the mop through tight corners. The hatchling responded with chirps and tiny nudges, and for Jonas that was enough. By the end of his shift, the bond had become a visible spectacle. Crew members stopped to watch him walk down the corridors with the hatchling perched proudly on his shoulder. Even security officers, initially suspicious, gave him respectful nods. "Take good care of it, Reed," one said. "I've never seen anything like it." Jonas smiled, glancing at the hatchling. "I will," he said softly. As days passed, the hatchling grew stronger under his care. Its scales gleamed brighter, wings flapped with increasing confidence, and its chirps became more varied, almost as if it were learning to communicate. Jonas encouraged it gently, never forcing it, always patient. Each small success, the hatchling catching a morsel of food, standing on its own, or chirping a new sound, was celebrated quietly between them. Through it all, the strange calm energy persisted. Machines continued to operate smoothly near him, minor malfunctions vanished, and crew morale improved. Some staff joked that the janitor and the hatchling were a team, though no one truly understood why. Jonas shrugged off the whispers, focusing on his daily work and the well-being of the little creature that had chosen him. It was clear, even to the most skeptical scientists, that the bond was extraordinary. The hatchling did not just trust Jonas, it responded to him with loyalty, affection, and a sense of purpose. And in return, Jonas provided the care, patience, and attention that no one else could. In a station filled with lights, alarms, and complex systems, the simplest things, kindness, trust, and connection, were proving more powerful than anyone had expected. The janitor and the hatchling became inseparable, two beings quietly changing the rhythm of the station. Jonas did not yet know the significance of their connection, nor the events it would set in motion. All he knew was that the hatchling had chosen him, and he had chosen to protect it. Together they moved through the corridors, a small pair in a vast space station, unknowingly creating ripples that would soon reach far beyond Draven. From the upper observation deck, the station crew often gazed at Draven's skies, scanning for meteor showers, weather patterns, or anomalies. Lately, reports had grown unusual. Scientists were noting strange shadows moving in the clouds, fast-moving shapes that were too large and too coordinated to be normal birds or weather phenomena. "Probably some migration pattern we don't understand yet," Dr. Laura Kent said dismissively during one morning briefing. Other staff nodded, uneasy but unconvinced. Jonas Reed, meanwhile, had started noticing patterns himself. Whenever he carried the hatchling to the observation deck, its tiny eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the distant sunlight streaming through the glass. It chirped softly, leaning forward and pressing against his hands as it stared down at Draven. There was an intensity in the creature's gaze, a focus that seemed to track shapes moving across the sky. Jonas did not understand why, but he felt a strange connection as well. Something in him responded to its attention. "Jonas, come look at this," called one of the station technicians one evening. Jonas walked over slowly, the hatchling perched on his shoulder, wings fluttering slightly. Through the large glass window, a shadow moved, vast and serpentine, cutting across the twilight sky. It was unlike anything Jonas had ever seen. His breath caught. The hatchling stirred, chirping softly but urgently, pressing its small body closer against him. The hatchling's eyes glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with Jonas's heartbeat. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, as if the creature's excitement or anticipation had a physical effect on him. "What is it?" Jonas whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Scientists around him consulted their instruments, but the readings seemed normal. There was no heat signature, no electromagnetic anomaly. Yet the shadows in the sky were undeniable. Over the next few days, sightings increased. More of the massive creatures appeared, swooping and gliding through the atmosphere. The station cameras captured images that amazed and frightened the crew. Enormous wingspans, scales shimmering like jewels, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of Draven's clouds. Dr. Kent remained skeptical. "It's probably a species we haven't catalogued," she said. "There's no need to panic." Jonas, however, felt differently. Every time the hatchling peered at the sky, its body tense, its chirps insistent, he realized these creatures were responding to it. One evening, as the station dimmed lights for the night cycle, Jonas carried the hatchling back to the observation deck. He leaned against the railing, tired from his shift but captivated by the sky. The hatchling chirped more urgently than usual, wings flapping slightly, and then Jonas heard it, a deep, echoing roar like thunder coming from the clouds above. His heart raced. What is that?" he whispered, clutching the hatchling closer. The noise grew louder and multiplied, another roar and another until the sky seemed alive with sound. Through the glass he saw them, enormous dragons, hundreds of them descending in formation. Their wings cut through the air like living sails, their eyes glowing with intelligence and purpose. Jonas stumbled back slightly, awe and fear gripping him. The hatchling chirped excitedly, pressing its head against Jonas's cheek. It was calling them, its family, its kin. The dragons responded to the sound, to the small voice Jonas had cared for, and they obeyed. They were not mindless beasts. They moved with precision, swooping around each other, scanning the station, their presence both terrifying and magnificent. Jonas realized in that moment the truth. The tiny creature he had saved was more than it seemed. His small act of kindness had awakened a mighty force, a legion of dragons bound to the hatchling. Station alarms rang, and lights blinked nervously as sensors detected the dragon's movements. Some crew members panicked, retreating from the observation deck. Jonas, however, stood firm, still holding the hatchling close. He did not feel fear. Somehow, he understood that these dragons were not there to harm. They had answered the call of the hatchling, and by extension, of Jonas, who had protected it. Dr. Kent approached cautiously, notebook in hand, wide-eyed. Jonas, they're responding to it. It's incredible. These dragons, they recognize the hatchling. And, somehow, they're aware of you too. Jonas nodded, unsure how to explain it. He simply whispered, I saved it. I just helped it survive. That's all. The hatchling chirped again, nuzzling his hand as if affirming his words. Through the night, the dragons circled the station, their massive shadows drifting across the surface of Draven below. Jonas stayed at the observation deck, watching with the hatchling on his shoulder. Each dragon seemed intelligent, calculating and aware, yet calm, not threatening. Jonas realized the enormity of what had happened. A tiny act of compassion had summoned an army of creatures that no human had ever imagined existed. The station scientists scrambled to analyze the situation. Communications were sent to Draven's orbiting defense units, who were equally stunned. Reports came back. The dragons did not attack. They hovered protectively around the station, seemingly assessing the humans below. Jonas's chest swelled with a mixture of awe and pride. He had only done what he felt was right, and now the consequences were unimaginable. For hours, Jonas observed the dragons with the hatchling chirping happily in his hands. He began to notice patterns. The creatures moved with coordination, glancing toward him as though seeking guidance. Though he did not give explicit commands, his presence seemed to stabilize the group. It became clear that the hatchling's call was powerful, but Jonas's care had forged a bond between them that the dragons recognized. By morning, the station had reports from every deck. Crew members described the dragons in awe, some in fear, yet all acknowledged the presence of the hatchling in Jonas. He had changed the station's dynamics overnight. What had been a quiet, ordinary janitor's life was now intertwined with a living legend. The hatchling's chirps, once soft and uncertain, were now confident, carrying across corridors and echoing slightly as if calling to distant wings. Jonas realized something profound. His small choice to help the hatchling, to nurture it rather than ignore it, had set events in motion far beyond his understanding. These dragons, majestic and intelligent, were linked to him and the hatchling. They would not just remain in the skies, they would act. And soon he understood the station and the planet might rely on them. For now, Jonas stayed quietly at the observation deck, holding the hatchling, watching the dragons circle. Awe and calm filled him. He did not yet know the purpose of this bond or the actions that would follow, but he understood one thing. Saving a small, helpless creature could ripple across the galaxy in ways no one could predict. And for Jonas Reed, the human janitor, life had changed forever. The day began like any other on the Draven research station, with alarms sounding in the distance and lights flickering across the corridors. But this was no ordinary day. Jonas Reed, the janitor who had spent countless quiet hours caring for the hatchling, felt a tremor of tension ripple through the station. Screens along the observation deck flashed warnings. A fleet of alien ships had appeared in Draven's orbit, sleek and menacing, their weapons charged and ready. Panic swept through the station instantly. Scientists froze, crew members shouted, and civilians ran for cover. Jonas, carrying the hatchling on his shoulder, took a deep breath. He did not have a uniform, a weapon, or any formal training in combat. He was a janitor. But instinct told him what to do. He ran toward the central command area, calling for calm. Everyone listen, he shouted. We can handle this. Stay calm, follow instructions, and protect each other. His voice carried authority even though he had no rank. People paused, sensing something in his tone, a confidence they had never expected from a janitor. The hatchling chirped loudly, wings flaring slightly as if signaling the dragons. Outside the observation windows, the enormous creatures circled the fleet, their massive wings creating gusts that rocked the smaller alien ships. The dragons' eyes glowed, tracking the movements of each vessel with precision. Jonas understood immediately that they would follow the hatchling's guidance, and through the hatchling they followed him. Jonas ran from deck to deck, guiding scientists, soldiers, and station personnel alike. "Secure the civilians in the lower decks," he called. "Engineers, divert power to the shields. Maintenance, block the corridors to prevent breaches." People moved quickly, inspired by his calm direction. Even those who had doubted him moments before now worked tirelessly, trusting his decisions completely. Outside, the alien ships fired. Lasers sliced through the darkness of space, hitting the station's shields with sparks of blue and green energy. The dragons swooped between the blasts, breathing flames and roaring in unison, striking at the alien vessels with deadly accuracy. Their fire was not reckless. It was calculated, precise, and perfectly timed to disable engines and weapons without unnecessary destruction. Jonas guided them silently, moving from console to console, pointing to weak points the humans should cover, urging the crew to hold steady. A group of soldiers panicked when a smaller attack craft broke through the outer perimeter. Jonas sprinted toward them, waving his arms. "Hold the line. Don't let fear control you. We protect each other." The soldiers steadied, raising their weapons as Jonas had shown. The hatchling chirped, and a dragon swooped low, breathing fire in a controlled arc that destroyed the incoming ship. The humans cheered silently, morale bolstered by the dragon's display of power and Jonas's leadership. Engineers worked tirelessly under Jonas's guidance. He directed them to repair damaged shields, redirect power from non-essential systems, and keep critical life support functioning. Civilians moved quickly to safe zones, following Jonas's calm instructions. The station, which had seemed unprepared and vulnerable, suddenly became a coordinated force. It was not just the humans fighting. It was humans and dragons together, a team united by instinct, trust, and courage. The alien fleet tried to adapt. Larger vessels pressed closer, attempting to flank the dragons and breach the station. Jonas, holding the hatchling, leaned over a control panel, calculating quickly. "We need to lure them toward the upper deflector arrays. The dragons can force them into traps." Engineers nodded, soldiers moved into position, and the dragons responded immediately, diving and circling as Jonas had anticipated. The battle raged for hours. Blasts lit the darkness of space, alarms rang constantly, and the station shook under repeated attacks. Yet Jonas moved tirelessly, never panicking, always thinking of the people around him. He encouraged civilians to help each other, guided soldiers to strategic positions, and coordinated with engineers to keep the station alive. Every time a dragon struck, the hatchling chirped proudly, eyes glowing, signaling the next move. Jonas followed that signal instinctively, like a conductor guiding an orchestra of fire and wings. Through the chaos, something remarkable happened. The humans, inspired by Jonas's courage and calm, began to act without hesitation. They moved with purpose, helping those in danger, reinforcing defenses, and coordinating with the dragons. Fear transformed into determination. Civilians who had been trembling now assisted soldiers, engineers became improvisational tacticians, and even the scientists who had previously been skeptical, directed efforts to maximize efficiency. The dragons, massive and intelligent, fought with precise coordination. One dragon wrapped around an alien ship, using its tail to flip it into the atmosphere of Draven. Another breathed fire in arcs that disabled multiple engines simultaneously. They were not reckless. They were disciplined, responding instantly to the hatchling's subtle signals. Jonas guided them silently, moving with the flow of battle, predicting enemy maneuvers before they happened. By nightfall, the alien fleet had begun to retreat. Ships that had appeared confident and powerful now limped away, engines damaged, weapons destroyed, and morale broken. The humans cheered quietly as the dragons circled above, keeping watch and signaling that the threat had passed. Jonas, exhausted but calm, held the hatchling and watched the retreating ships. The station had survived. Draven was safe. Dr. Laura Kent approached, notebook in hand, eyes wide. "Jonas? I don't understand. You coordinated all of this. How?" Jonas shook his head, smiling faintly. "I didn't do it alone," he said, glancing at the hatchling. "They followed their hatchling and we just worked together. That's all." The crew began to see Jonas differently. he was no longer just the janitor who cleaned the floors. He was the one who had led them when fear threatened to overwhelm them. The hatchling, small and unassuming, had summoned the dragons, but Jonas's calm guidance and quick thinking had allowed humans and dragons to fight as one. From that day on, Jonas Reed's name carried weight on the station. The humans remembered him not as a soldier or a general, but as the man whose courage, compassion, and instinct had turned a panicked station into a coordinated force that could repel an entire alien fleet. The dragons remained near the station, loyal to the hatchling who in turn had bonded with Jonas, creating a partnership that would shape the future of Draven and its inhabitants. Jonas understood that the battle was only the beginning. He had seen what could happen when humans worked together with creatures of incredible power, inspired not by fear but by trust and courage. And as he held the hatchling on his shoulder, watching the dragon soar in the sky above, he realized that a janitor, small and overlooked, could become the heart of something far greater than he had ever imagined. After the battle, the station was quiet again. Smoke and sparks still lingered in some parts, but the worst was over. The alien fleet had retreated beyond Draven's orbit, and the humans had survived. Outside the observation windows, the dragons circled gently, wings stretched wide, keeping watch. They had not flown away, nor had they left the hatchling behind. Their loyalty was clear, and their presence brought a sense of safety that no alarms or weapons could provide. Jonas Reed returned to his usual work, pushing his mop and cleaning cart through the long, shining corridors of the station. The dragons often followed him silently, their massive wings tucked in as they walked or perched in high areas, watching over him and the humans. Their scales glimmered in the light of the station, red and gold reflecting softly on the polished floors. Crew members and scientists watched in awe but did not disturb him. Jonas moved calmly as he had always done, sweeping and wiping, repairing minor damage with his cleaning tools, and checking every corner of the station for safety. No one offered him titles or medals. Jonas did not ask for them. He was a janitor and that was enough for him. What mattered was that the people around him were safe, that the station was running smoothly, and that the hatchling he had saved thrived with its dragon companions. Sometimes, when he paused to mop a floor or clean a spill, the hatchling would chirp softly, and one of the dragons would nuzzle him lightly with its snout as if thanking him. Jonas would smile and continue quietly. The humans began to tell stories about him. At first, they were whispers among crew members, the janitor who led dragons to protect us. Then they became louder, shared in meals, during breaks and in quiet moments between shifts. Children of station staff would peek around corners to see Jonas sweeping the halls, the hatchling perched on his shoulder, and a dragon resting nearby. They stared wide-eyed, imagining the adventures he had faced, though Jonas never boasted or spoke of the battle. Jonas's humility became part of the story. He did not want to be a hero. He simply did what he thought was right. His actions had inspired the humans around him, teaching them courage and teamwork, but he remained a simple man with a mop, a bucket, and a hatchling that trusted him completely. Even the most skeptical scientists came to respect him, not just for leading in a moment of danger, but for remaining kind and calm when no one else could. The dragons stayed close to the station for months, protecting it silently. They were enormous and majestic, yet careful not to harm anyone. Crew members grew accustomed to their presence, moving through the halls beneath their watchful eyes. Dr. Laura Kent observed Jonas one afternoon as he swept the floors with the hatchling chirping beside him. "He is ordinary," she said softly to a colleague. "And yet, everything he touches seems alive. The humans, the systems, even the dragons respond to him. It's extraordinary." Jonas overheard this but only smiled. "I'm just doing my job," he said quietly, tilting his head toward the hatchling. The little creature chirped as if agreeing, and one of the dragons lowered its head in a slow nod, eyes glowing faintly. Jonas laughed softly. All right. That's enough praise for one day." Days turned into weeks and the station thrived. Systems ran efficiently, morale stayed high, and the humans felt safer knowing the dragons were near. Yet Jonas continued his ordinary routine. He swept floors, emptied trash, cleaned labs, and helped wherever he could. Sometimes, when repairs were needed, he assisted engineers. Sometimes he simply checked on a tired crew member, offering a kind word or a small smile. The dragons followed him everywhere, their presence a quiet reminder of the events that had changed the station forever. Children especially loved to watch him. They had heard the stories of the battle, of how a janitor and a hatchling had saved the station with the help of dragons. When Jonas passed by, they would wave, and sometimes the hatchling would chirp or hop lightly in response. One dragon would occasionally lower its massive head so that the children could see its eyes glow softly. Jonas never scolded them, only reminded them gently to be careful. Even the station commanders learned to respect him. They no longer questioned his decisions or his presence near critical systems. They saw that Jonas's guidance during the battle had saved lives, and his calm, observant nature had continued to benefit the station. Yet Jonas never assumed authority. He never gave orders. He simply acted when needed, quietly and effectively. The humans around him learned from him not because he demanded it, but because he inspired it. The hatchling grew rapidly under Jonas's care, eventually becoming nearly as large as a small dragon itself. Its scales shimmered even brighter and its wings flapped confidently. The bond between Jonas and the creature deepened every day. The dragons treated him with respect and loyalty, and Jonas, in turn, treated them with patience and care. He had not asked for power or recognition, but he had gained trust and friendship that stretched beyond species. Stories spread throughout the station and eventually to other colonies. Jonas Reed, the janitor who had saved a hatchling, became known as the human who earned the loyalty of a legion of dragons. His courage, compassion, and kindness had transformed him into a force capable of shaping events far beyond what anyone could have imagined. And yet he remained the same simple man, sweeping floors, maintaining order, and caring for the creatures around him. Years later, new recruits would be shown the dragons and the hatchling, perched near the observation decks, and told the story of Jonas Reed. Remember him, they were told. Not because he had weapons or rank, but because he had courage, kindness, and heart. One human's compassion can change the course of history. Jonas never sought fame. He did not want it. For him, the joy was in quiet moments. The hatchling chirping happily, a dragon resting its head nearby, and the knowledge that the humans he worked with were safe and inspired to do their best. The station thrived, and the dragons remained its protectors, always near Jonas, always loyal to the one who had saved one small, helpless life. Through his simple actions, Jonas Reed taught the station, the colony, and even the dragons something important. Heroism does not always come with grand titles or glory. Sometimes it comes quietly in the form of care, patience, and trust. One human, with nothing but heart and compassion, could awaken loyalty, bravery, and unity that shaped the galaxy itself. And so Jonas continued to sweep the corridors, the hatchling perched lightly on his shoulder, dragons watching overhead. The humans remembered him not as a soldier or a general, but as the one who saved a hatchling and, through kindness, created a legion of dragons to protect them all. Courage, compassion, and simple acts of care had transformed a single human into a legend, quiet, humble, and extraordinary.